Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and we're joined by our Cincinnati Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith. And Charlie, Cincinnati Bengals are wrapped up the 2025 regular season. They finished with a record that's 6-11, one game better than the last place AFC North team, the Cleveland Browns, who did come into Paycor Stadium and beat the Cincinnati Bengals 20-18 in the regular season finale. There's been press conferences. Zach Taylor spoke today. There's been a statement released by Mike Brown stating that they're bringing back director of player personnel Duke Tobin, and the head coach Zach Taylor would be back. I didn't necessarily expect any changes to be made there, at least not with those two. But what's your thought now that the Cincinnati Bengals have missed the playoffs for the third consecutive season, but immediately, pretty much, they say things are going to remain the same?
I look at it as the fact that it got to the level where Mike Brown released a statement, which he has only done at the end of the 2020 season. And then adding on that, how it also highlighted Duke Tobin as a sign that they don't look at this as, another year where the Bengals just came up short. I think the fact that they took that action, combined with the fact that Duke Tobin will speak to the media on Friday, those are signs that the Bengals Bleav there were greater, deeper issues that need to be recognized and, kind of held accountable. It, to me, again, shows that even though they haven't changed the people in positions of power, they were like, there's pressure on what's going on, and their actions to me reflected that.
Well, Solomon Wilcots is going to weigh in here in a way that typically I don't. I have a lot of respect for the people in the Cincinnati Bengals front office because they've been doing it a long time. And I have a lot of respect for Duke Tobin. I consider him a personal friend. I have a lot of respect for Zach Taylor, who I think is a very good coach. I think he's better than average. I don't agree with people who want to take shots at him because I think he's a great play caller. I've seen him go toe-to-toe with the likes of Andy Reid and with Kyle Shanahan and win. These are some of the best play callers in our game. You know this, Charlie. And I've seen him do that, bleed time off the clock and still get the points needed to win games. And his teams have scored 30 or more points at a very high ratio over the last couple of years, but yet it hasn't equated to winning. So I think we have to begin to look at talent. We got to begin to look at the defense. I think Al Golden is good for this team. But if the Cincinnati Bengals front office, who I do Bleav is the part that needs to be looked at more closely here, and it is not just the people who are selecting the players, but more importantly, it's the process that you go through while selecting them. And it's making sure that they have all the resources that everyone else has available. I think in some ways we are behind the curve and not ahead of it when it comes to the 32 teams in this league, when it comes to how do we go about selecting players. Like I could have told you last year's draft that we should have taken Xavier Woods from Notre Dame, that he would have been a great fit, that we had a need at safety and he would have been a great fit as a third-round pick, and Al Golden's defense, considering he played for the guy. Like, this stuff is not very complicated, and we can have a deeper conversation that takes us deeper so that we can explain it all. But I do Bleav that greater resources are needed. I do Bleav that there needs to be a higher level of thinking and more ingenuity and creativity when it comes to roster building. Clearly, what they're currently doing is not working. So I don't have to go out on a limb by making that statement. If you said, Solomon, well, what do we need to do? I would tell you that you need more boots on the ground, that you need more people, that you cannot, when it comes to the division of labor, that you cannot have your people, college scouting, pro scouting, and doing all the work of 20 people, 4 people doing the work of 20 people, 10 people doing the work of 50 people, that the work has to get done before you get to what we now call the offseason, right? Where the coaches are just now diving in on those players and going to be evaluating those players and think that they could do the same job that the scouts who have been evaluating these players all along throughout the season, while these coaches were trying to win games and trying to coach the talent, trying to get them better in the developmental phase, that they can be just as good starting and jumping into the game late at picking the players coming out in this year's draft, picking the players that are about to hit the free agent market. You're just now diving into it. And so you're supplementing your work staff or the number of people that you have evaluating the players, grading these players, and you're supplementing that workforce with coaches who have a full-time job, who've already been busy doing things. And you think that they could do the same level or quality of the job that the people who have been doing it every single day since the whole process began. And I'm just here to say, how has that worked out for you so far? Has it yielded championship trophies? Has it yielded consistent division championships? Has it given you consistency year over year over year? Have you developed a culture where we know what kind of players we could expect the Bengals to draft? I can't say that because that's what the best teams do, Charlie.
The Bengals are a team that has to be much better at things that it just hasn't been good enough at over the last several years. You know, the Bengals haven't signed a real impact difference-making free agent on the defensive side of the ball since 2021. That, of course, obviously needed to change in 2025. And then a message that Zac Taylor really stressed today was it took a while for the coaching staff to get together because they hired Al after he made it to the college football championship game, and there was a new staff and moving pieces. Well, it turned out all those moving pieces, you know, impacted your defense in 2025 in a negative way. So all that goes to show that the process and the behind the scenes and the structure cost the Bengals in 2025 when they did need to make changes. Now, they believe that the continuity will really serve them well in 2026, but all you've lost now is a full season and a full opportunity.
And what they're getting ready to do now is they're getting ready to go full on into college scouting. Many of these coaches, the Bengals coaches, are getting ready to hit the road and start scouting college players. They're going to be at the combine. They're going to be at the workout. They're going to be at the Senior Bowl. They are now going to become full-time scouts. Do you know what other coaches are? Are they looking at those players on the other teams? Yes, they're going to look at them. But you know what they're doing? They're doing what we call quality control. They're looking at their own processes. They're looking at their own players. They're looking at what the things that we can do better. What drills can we begin to implement that's going to make us better? Because here are the things that we didn't do well during the 2025 season. So now we got to begin to install a curriculum, if you will, to help us get better at those things and continue to build towards where we want to be. So there's a lot of internal work when the season's over that current coaches have to do on themselves as a coach, on their players when it comes to developing these players. But, oh no, they're getting ready to hit the road like a college scout. Because guess what? If you are a Cincinnati Bengals assistant coach, you moonlight as a full-time scout and as a full-time coach. Now, look, I'm not here to kill the Bengals process. I'm sitting here saying how the process needs to be improved. I'm sitting here saying that these are the things that I think need to be improved upon, because if you keep doing things the same way that you've done them, you're going to keep getting the same results. And so I would like to see them improve on those areas. Allow the coaches to coach. Next question, Charlie. What were your takeaways from Zac Taylor's press conference today? I think it's a good thing that he's coming back as the head coach. I know it would have to be within the scope of what Joe Burrow wants. I'm not here to speak for Joe Burrow, but I would find it hard to believe that if he didn't sign on for this, that it would not have been announced so immediately. But I do believe that Joe Burrow and Zac Taylor have a phenomenal relationship and that it continues to thrive even as we sit here having this conversation today. What were some of your takeaways?
Zac said the offensive side, as we kind of knew, was pretty much set, and this offseason is going to be about the defensive side of the ball combined with what this defense can do to finish games. And some of that will be individual player development. You know, like, can Miles Murphy become the closer? Can other pass rushers step up and do the same? And then a part of that, of course, is going to be player acquisition as well. And Zac can come out and say, we need this, this, and this. But he spoke a lot about the process that they're about to go through, an in-depth look heading into free agency, working very much with, to kind of the point you were saying, the coaches and the coordinators being very involved in this process on defense to better identify what they need and what specifically they want to do to improve the defense.
Look, there is no doubt, and this is true around the National Football League, that coaches should be involved in the process. The complete onus of who we're picking and who the players that we're going to be drafting should not be put on those guys because they're busy during the college season. NFL coaches don't have time to watch college games. They're too busy trying to win games at their level. So you have to backfill a lot of work to dive into the process of now scouting the college game to be able to select those players. And that onus should be on scouts who are doing that full time all year round. Coaches can give the scouts and give people like Duke Tobin sort of a prototype. Here's what we want at corners. Here's what we expect for what we do and our defensive system. Here's what we want in our safeties. For our edge rushers, here are the prototypes of players that we want. Here are the characteristics that we want in those players at right guard, at left guard, or at left tackle, or at right tackle. Every single position has a prototype for the team, for the system that they're being asked to play in. This is high-level player acquisition, okay? And coaches know that at a granular level more than what the scouts would know. In fact, they're going to be informed. The scouts should be informed by the coaches in terms of here's what we want in our safeties. Here's what we want in our corners. Some teams want bigger physical corners. Some want smaller guys who are a little bit more. What do you want in a slot corner, right? We know what Mike Hilton was. That's what they want. And so that's where coaches are really involved in that process. I want to get your thoughts because this was something that we saw materialize at Paycor Stadium when Myles Garrett set the new single season sack record. He sacked Joe Burrow. And being a Bengals fan, the one really was excited about Myles Garrett, achieving that milestone. But I do Bleav that there is a time and a place where we're all fans of the game. And while it might be someone on another team or even a hated rival, that you have respect. Like I would love to think that if you're in Pittsburgh or if you're in Baltimore and Joe Burrow achieves some significant milestone and that the NFL would want to honor that. It would say, hey, we're going to stop and take a breather because what he just did, we don't see done every single day. And that whatever that home team is, whatever that team is, that they would be respectful of that. I've seen it happen. I've been around this league too long. I remember playing in a game right here at Three River Stadium. And I remember Steve Largent setting the all-time reception record against us. Now, was I happy that he caught the ball on us that day? This was a record that he had set over his career. Why would I take that personal that he caught, one of those many balls against us that day? So they had a little moment. He had his little thing, and then we got back to playing. That was it. But we didn't throw a parade for him or nothing. I didn't go over there and pat him on the back. Give him his moment, give him his flowers, give him his day in the sun. That was at least my attitude. But as we find out that there were a few Bengals, including the coach, that wasn't too happy about the momentary pause in action to sort of honor Myles Garrett or give him his flowers. Your thoughts?
What I find interesting is like if someone sets the all-time receptions record or yards record or completions on offense, like you are control of when the ball is snapped next. You are still owning the pace of the game. If you set an all-time field goal record, the game is stopped. But technically, when Myles got that sack, the clock's ticking, and it's a high leverage, a high stress pressure situation for the Bengals. And there was no part of the preparation process where it's like, hey, if it's a 2-minute drill, but Myles gets his sack, then we'll take a beat. No, like the Bengals were, I think, just really caught off guard because they were playing the game, and then an interruption that no one couldn't have even anticipated because they didn't know they were going to stop the game for it happens, and for lack of a better term, interferes with the Bengals' ability to snap the ball, which is what they were trying to do. So I think most of their reaction was just a product of the surprise, but I'm certainly happy that Myles got to celebrate that moment.
But then it goes into the press conference or speaking into a microphone after the game. That's where you would think calmer heads would prevail and say, oh, you know what? I get it. I get it. There was a big something bigger was happening at that moment. And I always say nothing's bigger than the game, but you and I both know the NFL wants to honor its legends. They want to honor the people who make this league what it is. I mean, people come to see Myles Garrett. He puts butts in the seats. He is part of the show, just like Joe Burrow's part of the show. Jamar Chase is part of the show. I mean, let's face it. I'm not going to sit and act like all players aren't important, but you and I both know there are some who move the needle. This is a guy that moves the needle. And while he may not be wearing our colors, and I'm not sitting here arguing for a Cleveland Brown, trust me. But what I'm saying is I have a nuance about me that can still be respectful for that accomplishment, even though I want to see the Bengals beat the brakes off the Cleveland Browns.
And certainly, yeah, the moment in the game was about Myles Garrett. And I guess that's something probably the NFL needs to iron out and finalize. What is our policy going to be when defensive records get set?
And if you don't want him setting the record on you, don't let him touch a quarterback. There's something. This is somewhat in your control. You can manage that. That was how it should be managed proactively. After that, you should know once he gets the sack, you should be surprised the paper streamers weren't going off. That there wasn't more of a fanfare about it. But I tend to believe that he can be honored in that moment. That there can be, because we were here. We were right here in a home game when Steve Largent, hit a milestone moment in his career. And I don't remember anyone having a problem with that. But that he was on the offensive side of the ball. They get to dictate tempo and the timing of the speed of play and how things are going to happen. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it and wanted to speak on that as well. The letter from Mike Brown. Anything of note that you want to share with us, Charlie?
I just think it's really important that compared to the 2020 letter, Mike included Duke Tobin, which, considering that Duke kind of became the face of the Bengals from a personnel perspective, really around 2019. Mm-hmm. He started speaking at the combine earlier than that, but then 2019, really when he ran the coaching search that led to Zach Taylor, that's when it seemed publicly, at least, Duke took an elevated role, just in terms of kind of how he was perceived as his impact and power in the organization. And the fact that Duke was also mentioned showed a significant change.
Well, it's really good. Look, I'm glad that both are back. I don't think the fix here is to jettison the coach or jettison the director of player personnel. I do think improvements need to be made. There's no doubt about it. I mean, to sit here and say that we don't need to get better in these areas, I think that would be turning a blind eye. That would be having a blind spot, not being able to see that it simply isn't good enough, and to keep doing things the way that we've done it is only going to get you the same results. And so there needs to be some expansion, greater resources. I do think enlargement of staff, and just that, to me, human resourcing, that's part of it, but also technological resourcing and really innovative thinking, right, in terms of how you're evaluating and how that's happening. I will say this, that when Marvin Lewis came to this team, he did bring a new approach to how they went about evaluating players. And those things, those ideas were embraced, and you saw a better selection process, didn't you? And even with the Super Bowl team and some of the players that were on it were part of that selection process, whether it was Tyler Boyd, whether it was Joe Mixon, whether it was some of the other players. Those were some of the players think about it. That was a process that found a Geno Atkins in the 4th round, right? That found Carlos Dunlap outside of the 1st round. Not every player who goes on to be really good players for this team need to be selected in the 1st round. That's what has to we have to get back to that. You've got to begin to find players. Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick. He led the league in receiving this year, right? So not every player has to be a 1st round pick. You can find impact players in this league outside of the 1st round. It'd be great if we could do that. So, Charlie, I want to ask you, because I know you put pen to paper, to give us your top 10 moments from the 2025 season. Given that you have such a wonderful mind and wonderful talent for documenting such things, what do you got?
Number one, I have Joe Burrow makes, I think, his play of the year to cap off the win of the year on Thanksgiving with the way he read the defense and threw a dime to Andre Yosivas down the seam in Baltimore on Thanksgiving, maybe the play of that game and what that meant. Number two, I have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins' contracts get done back in March and what it meant to kind of bring that whole core back together. Number three, I have DJ Turner picking off DK Metcalf, kind of one-handed, snatching the ball out of Metcalf's hands, showing DJ Turner that he's a piece to build around.
Yeah.
Number four, I have Joe Burrow smiling, walking off the field after a dominant win in Miami, because there had been all that conversation that week about Burrow's happiness and how he was doing, but then he scored 40-plus points and had a big grin. Number five is, I know it was a loss, but Joe Flacco learning the offense in 5 days and being extremely competitive against the Packers was one of the more remarkable things I've seen. Number six is Joe Flacco setting his career high in passing yards when he had a bad shoulder. A few days off of that injury in a loss against the Bears. Number seven, I have Chase Brown completing his first 1,000-yard season. Number eight, I have Evan McPherson setting a franchise record with a 63-yard field goal versus the Patriots. Number nine, I have Al Golden debuting some brand new defensive ideas for his scheme and showing how his scheme was going to evolve. The way he did that at Baltimore was a huge milestone moment for this defense. And then number 10, Trey Hendrickson takes over in the fourth quarter against Jacksonville and shows what could have been had he stayed healthy this year.
Wow. Those are 10 really good moments. And I share with every single one of them. I'm only going to give one moment that made me jump out of my chair. And this is one that I didn't think we'd be seeing. And that was Joe Burrow. Since he's come back from the injury, Joe Burrow under center and us running the ball, us hitting play action pass plays down the middle of the field and using the run action to help our offensive line protect Joe Burrow. Putting him under center is one of the best things that we could ever do to help him. And I know it's not his preference because you remember he was in Joe Brady's offense at LSU. It was all shotgun, 11 personnel, and he was Dylan. Well, you can block those guys. In our league, it's very difficult to block in shotgun, and all your linemen are kick step, moving backwards, and you're not pounding that run game, and you don't have the run action. You don't have the run fakes to make them pause and make them have to read through the ball handling. And to see Joe Burrow now under center, I think it's clear. Once he came back, the run game was better. The offensive line was better. The operations were better, and he was getting a whole lot, getting hit a lot less upon his return than we saw in those first 2 games of the season, Charlie. Do I get a confirmation from you, or is it, or am I just trading even there?
100%. Great point.
Well, I appreciate it, because I think we need to see more of that and those things that you just mentioned in the upcoming 2026 season. I want to end on this. I want to just kind of look at a Cleveland Browns team who they fired their head coach. When I looked at that roster, I'm like, how did we lose to the Cleveland Browns? Why do we lose? I don't want to say often, but at an inordinary high amount for a team whose record is not very good. Why do we have a tough time? I mean, even when we won up there earlier this year, it was fortuitous, right? The bounce of the ball. Why do we struggle if we're that much better than the Browns? Or maybe we're not. I don't know. If we are, though, because they don't have a quarterback like we do they? No, they don't. Why do we struggle to beat the Cleveland Browns? I need help on this one, Charlie.
Well, they beat them 4 times in a row before this week. And I think what you were seeing on Sunday was, let's just, they kind of didn't think Cleveland would score a lot. And, their offense, Cleveland's only scored 6 points. So that led to them being more conservative, some punts and some fringe situations, because they didn't think Cleveland would make them pay for that. And they were right. It's just that, the offense turned the ball over twice for touchdowns, and then Myles Garrett took over. And the Bengals have a Myles Garrett problem, but so does everyone. Get in line, and they'll just need to do a better job protecting the ball against Cleveland next season.
So you said that we beat Cleveland 4 times in a row before Sunday?
End of 2023, both times in 2024, and then to start 2025.
We didn't sweep them last year. They cooked our bacon the opening game of the 2024 season.
23. I was 23.
Both. It was both. 2023 and 2024. We ended up winning the game at the end of last year. Yeah, we lost early in the season in 2024. We didn't sweep them last year. There wasn't a clean sweep. Do you have a clean sweep on that?
21-14.
The first game of the year. Remember, it was windy. Remember, it was horrible.
That was 2023.
That was 2023. And then we beat them at the end of 2024.
Last year they beat them at Cleveland in the game where Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles.
There you go. I should have known you would know. I should have known better than to second guess the brain that is Charlie Goldsmith. So my apologies, sir. I stand corrected. But it seems like we struggle every time we play them. It seems like we struggle every time. This was a game they clearly should have won, Charlie. I mean, they had no offense. Cleveland had no offense. They couldn't complete a pass on our defense. They should not have won the game.
Of course. I couldn't agree more.
And that's it. Nothing more than that.
I mean, they have a Myles Garrett problem. Everyone has a Myles Garrett problem. It's not like, Cleveland has changed so much over the years, their offense, their defense, this, that. The one thing that hasn't changed is Myles Garrett, who, even though he only had 1 sack, it felt like took over 6 or 7 drive-changing plays against the Bengals, and he was worth like 21 points in that game. That's why he's one of the best players I've ever seen.
He really is. In fact, the Cleveland Browns, with that defense under Jim Schwartz, they beat some of the best teams. I mean, you're going to look at some of the playoff teams. Remember, they beat Green Bay, playoff team. They beat Pittsburgh the week before, playoff team. I mean, that's what Myles Garrett can do. It'd be great to have one of those in our uniform, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be great?
I thought Trey Hendrickson was great for 4 years, but now you got to kind of find the next guy. Now, of course, Hendrickson wasn't Myles Garrett, and that's you and every team in football. The Browns would love to have Jamar Chase, but the Bengals are the ones who have Jamar.
Absolutely. Charlie, it's been great having you all season, my friend. Look forward to our conversations this offseason as the Cincinnati Bengals look to build and reconstruct a roster that is in need of improvement. But aren't we all really under construction and looking to improve on a day-to-day basis? I know that you thoroughly inspect your work product, inspect yourself.
Absolutely.
And you're trying to get better too, and so am I, Charlie. So it's okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, we want to thank you. We want to thank all Bengals fans, Bengals Nation, for joining us here on the Bleav in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. We'll see you next time, everyone.